Okay, today I would like to talk about changing focus. As mentioned, I'm a part of our customers organization because DNA is a services company. So we deliver teams to our clients and then we work together with them to create great products. And if the environment is dynamic, you would probably need to change focus a lot. So let's start with this. How many of you were approached by a person and then they ask you, what do you do for a living, especially when you're an Agile coach or Scrum Master? And then it's difficult to say because they don't really get it. I've chosen a collection of cards. These are actually things that people list in the job ads. So it's like the lot, and people go like, if you tell them that it's not gonna happen, you're not going to do all of that, it's impossible. And they're right. You got to choose wisely from that. And I strongly believe this should look something like this. So there are points in time for any single organization where you need to identify what is the stuff that needs to be done in order and then move to another place. And then again, what's now? All right. So I would like to tell a story about how I've done it for the last 2.5 years. All right. But before that, I would like you to give you a tiny bit of context so you understand the organization I'm working for. So it's a fintech company. It kicked off in 2020. Lovely year. You all know everybody's working remotely. May. And it's a small company inside a huge one because the huge one doesn't really know anything about creating software. So decided, we're gonna draw a line and then you go do whatever you're best at, okay? So it's a small company inside a huge one, they just share a name pretty much. It's an international multi-vendor environment. So people come from different countries, people come from different companies. People really didn't know each other. They never worked with each other until they started. And yeah, as mentioned, it scaled from 10 to more than 100 people in 2.5 years. And I was the only Scrum Master or Agile coach, so to say. And this was the limitation. I identified 5 points on the timeline where my context was very different from one another. And these are my examples, since it's Agile by example. And we're going to go briefly through them. So there are a couple of stories. It's May 2020, and we start, and people, as I mentioned, don't know each other. So we're like, who are you? And who are these people? How do we do it? And there's the board. So the people that pay for it already asking, it's May, I know, but can we deliver something by October so that we can prove it's actually okay to invest more money in that, right? And people immediately started working because it's what you do, but then again, they're asking if this is what the stuff that we are building and delivering, is that the thing you really need, all right? And I'm here, Dr. Goodwin, if you know New Amsterdam, trying to be a servant leader, trying to figure out what can help here. And first obvious answer is like sprint reviews, right? This is the place to connect your teams to the stakeholders. But after a first couple of those, we observe that we gathered a lot of stakeholders and they have no idea what we're on about when we are showing metrics, when we are talking about technical depth, but we need this feedback. We cannot really say, so ignore that meeting, right? So we take a step back and we focus on increment only. It doesn't mean we ignore the metrics, we just move them somewhere out. Maybe some of them will go to the head of engineering, and some of them go to the team's retrospectives, right? But the key thing is to show every single week on Friday to main stakeholders what stuff lands in production. No local hosts, no staging production, since we didn't have the customers yet, so it was possible just to release it. So we started tracking progress with working software, and this is what you want, right? The lightweight format, we had 3 teams back then. The lightweight format meant in an hour, every single week, we can show every single thing without being really boring to most of our stakeholders, and then even ask for some feedback on the way. And people felt really kind of aware on what is happening in the product. And we found out it was a great anchor for the rest of the way of working. So, regardless of the world you're coming from, if you're you need to know one thing. You can do your stuff. You do what you're best at. You do on whatever fits you, daily scrums, Kanban, whatever, because we come from different vendors, of course. But then you need to be there on Friday to try to figure out how your increment is, okay? Step number 1, October. We made it, to cut the story short, okay? The stakeholders were aware so that we could modify the scope so it fits, because obviously it didn't fit, the original didn't fit. That's crazy, asking people in May to deliver something by October, and they've just started, right? But there's a downside. People rushed a lot, okay? So they've made some room for improvements. They need to get back to these improvements. They have tech debt. They need to collect a better, more precise feedback. So it's everything about a new version of the continuous improvement process that they had, all right? And I'm the only person there, so I don't have time for all of this. And I was running that. I was running that until then, but I decided, like, there's so many things in the organization that I could do. I just need to move the ownership. This is the only way. So moving the ownership of the process that I'm trying to run to the teams, so that the teams have a lightweight format of a retrospective, have a lightweight format that everybody can run, everybody understands, for a post-mortem activity if there's an incident in production, okay? So we started doing that, and it paid off. It bought me a lot of time, and this was only one upside. The other one, we had a lot more opportunities to improve, because it wasn't only me being able to actually run something there. So, like, there was a developer that, like, was really easygoing, great communication skills. He could run anything pretty much the same quality as I would do. What's the problem with that? It works, right? And better results, because people actually owned these items from the beginning. I didn't have to chase them so that they can do the action they committed to. They did that, all right? So a lot better turnover. Okay, step number 3 is February, and people are saying that it's difficult to release to production. Although they released once a sprint, it sounds pretty okay for some of the teams, but they said, there's some room for improvement, all right? But the board and the management is saying, like, it will take time from development, so why would we even do this, you know? It's not a problem right now, okay? But then here comes a guy, and that would be me, saying, like, well, now it's time to break stuff. We don't have any users yet, so there's no one to apologize to, right? So it's a great time. And yeah, we released every single sprint, but then we thought, to quote Martin Fowler, if it hurts, and it did hurt to release it, do it more often, just like push-ups, right? One day it stops hurting if you do them more. And the first thing we needed to convince the board, so we went for the key DevOps metrics. We showed them one of those would be the mean time to restore, and they figured out, if we have a production incident, or if we have like a failed deployment, it takes now 6 hours to get the stuff back. It's not going to be compliant, and we're a fintech company. So yeah, you can invest. You can invest in that, all right? So we decoupled releases from the deployments with feature flags. That meant we did not need to maintain long-living branches. That sped up stuff a lot, because staging environment got really close to production. Anything that was hidden under a feature flag could be moved in, and the code was already working on production together with the rest of the code, okay? And as a byproduct, it helps being compliant, because if there's an incident in production, you don't need to wait, you don't need to fork, you don't need to cherry pick the branches. You can just take the stuff and just release it once you have a fix. So we went from roughly 1 to 2 deployments a sprint to more than 20 a week, okay? All right, next step. Yeah, this is a good one. We've spent a lot of time, because we had a lot of inter-team dependencies, we got up to the point when we have like 6 teams working on the same platform, not necessarily the same products, but the ownership of the products was quite wrong. So we kind of invested a lot, and we introduced Kafka streams to communicate asynchronously, so that people had their islands and they could work independently. There were little to none inter-teams dependencies, okay? That was great, and even better because you can run your local way of working. Some people do have a testing role, some people do have like a requirements manager role. Like the teams that I worked with had my role all the time around, okay? And you can see like people, that's why I'm showing like people are probably playing a bit different instruments, okay? But then the head of engineering comes in the management and they go like, and they're probably right, do we use our knowledge like we used to, but now what? And do we align tech? Do we need to do it? We probably need to do it. There's the security, there's the architecture, and there's the infrastructure. We would probably need at least a similar idea of what we are doing, okay? Yeah, so we shouldn't probably get back to like a monolith model, okay? Maybe some common nodes, something more lightweight. So we spent a lot of time building islands. So then we go back to start building bridges again, but not joining the islands, all right? So we've decided we would like to create horizontal structures, and it's up to the team how they would contribute to these structures. One of them would be a security forum, one of them would be an infrastructure planning and stuff like that, you know? So every team could decide on their own how they want to take part in it, but I had to. That was the only limitations, right? And what we found out, it reduced the cost of future changes. So when we had a similar idea how to build infrastructure with Terraform, Terragrant, I was pretty close on every team. People like synced a lot to make it aligned. And when it was time to move to a different AWS account, that wasn't a big deal. And if we had it on totally different levels, it's the weakest link, right? You're only as good as the as bad as the weakest link, okay? And it did not impact teams' autonomy. So people could still do stuff that they really enjoyed. Okay, last step I would like to bring. This year, people said, oh, it's 2 years now, and we've been dealing with similar stuff. We're entering new markets, but essentially, it's all the same stuff that we need to do repetitively in every single country, okay? And if we change something, immediately people said, oh, that's new stuff, but now the setup is wrong because we need a front-end engineer, all right? And one of the teams that had a bit less business pressure on them said, like, how can we in a flexible way help the other teams, but we're waiting for something so the backlog might be full in a second, okay? And then business said, oh, we're done with the big stuff. We probably need some more focus and speed, and we will give you like maybe 2 or 3 initiatives every quarter, but we need to make sure these are done. They're not going forever, okay? So we're going essentially from push where the product owner comes with ideas, and it's always the same ideas, to pool, where the developers organize around the initiatives. So every 2 or 3 months, we would gather on domain planning, and we would decide what is the best fit. And not only because people are specialized to do the work, but also if they want to try the new things, right? So they have some influence. I'm not telling everybody is joining one team and then the other team is empty, but they have to some extent influence on where they land, okay? And we observe more focus. There's one goal every sprint. There's one topic at a time, okay? So people are focused and they start delivering great stuff very, very quickly, okay? And how my focus kept changing. So we measured progress with working software, we shared the continuous improvement process, we delivered small increments, and so on and so on. So I thought how to track where I am, and I decided to go with pizza, okay? There's the starting point. There are single agile principles, like depicted by every single slice of the pizza, and there's this progress, how much you've eaten. And I was thinking, like, how do you eat your pizza organization, right? And you can go like a steady spiral, trying a little bit of every single stuff, right? It can happen. You maybe go bold, but utopian. So you go for all the slices, but you leave the other slices, but it really doesn't work because the slices are intra-connected, right? So what I believed I was doing something like this. So down to earth, trying to figure out which slice is the tastiest, what to go for, and then move to the other one if it's good enough, okay? By the way, people actually leave the edges to make room for to eat some more, okay? So I'm wondering how you eat your organizational pizzas. That's it, thanks.
Thank you. Guys, remember about the Slido and the questions. I have one question.
Yeah.
You said you didn't have the customer at the beginning. No users.
Yeah.
Maybe not the no customer, no users.
Yes.
How did you improve your focus on the increment and your review if you don't have user? What was the perspective of this?
We did not have production users, but we did have, like the original company had their users, so we had a huge customer base that we could rely on, meaning like the salespeople would normally already know what happened with their current customer base. But this was not yet the customers that would use our product.
Thank you. There was a question about the pineapple on pizza, but no.
No
I will
pineapple
answer
on
it.
pizza,
No pineapple on pizza.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.